Welcome to the Faith-Focused Free Thinking Podcast, a ministry of Ozaki Congregational Church in Grafton, Wisconsin. This is our 13th episode. We're glad you're with us. Hello, I'm Jeff. Thanks so much for joining us here at the Faith-Focused Free Thinking Podcast. Today I want to read something else for you that I wrote years ago and make some comments on it. At some point I'll get through all of these, but I hope they're helpful for you in the meantime. This particular writing talks about a specific person, a friend of mine that I knew years ago, in an attempt to ask the question, does God take into consideration the circumstances of life? If, as the church has taught, in order to be saved or in order to be right with God or in order to go to heaven, so to speak, a person must put their faith in Jesus or must believe in Jesus, or a person must embrace a certain perspective or a certain theology, or maybe a person must achieve a certain standard of behavior or must do certain things, certain sacrifices or rituals or going to church, reading their Bible, whatever. Whatever God requires for salvation, then I think we'd have to ask the question, what about the varying opportunities that people have had to believe in Jesus? Or what about the varying circumstances of people's lives that give some people a great opportunity to know and put their faith in Jesus, and other people virtually no opportunity? Of course, the church has answered this question in different ways. We're saying, well, no, God is not going to hold accountable someone who's never heard about Jesus. But then you might say, well, what about a person who's heard about Jesus once, but has certainly not had the opportunity that I've had? What about a person who's heard about Jesus plenty of times, but just in really difficult circumstances? And of course, I'm going to end up saying that I think where that question leads us and needs to lead us is say, yes, God takes into consideration the circumstances of life for all of us. And so will ultimately save all of us. Not because of our right response, not because we express faith in the right way or believe the right thing or do the right thing or achieve a certain standard of behavior. Not because of what we do, but because of what God has done for us. Again, I think this is the message of the gospel. Not what we must do or what we must believe, but what God has done for us. And I think it's a message that applies to all of us, to everyone, whatever is their circumstance. So, anyways, I hope this is helpful. I've titled this, A Circumstance Observed. Here we go. One morning I left home to spend some time writing. It had been my plan to find a weekend away to think and write and reflect as I began to wrestle through the idea of ultimate redemption. And I had left the house in a state of anticipation, looking forward to the time, optimistic at what I would accomplish. That state was brief, however, as my first stop on the road reminded me life is tough, that at times a belief in anything is hard to hold on to, that struggle is a part of life and belief. It's just not that easy. The first stop on the road was at a friend's place, where I was to talk with his landlord and offer to pay part of my friend's rent, a move of generosity I had decided the night before to take. After visiting with the landlord, however, it became abundantly clear that the best move in this case would be to not help my friend, or rather, that the best way to help my friend would be to not pay anything for him. Abundantly clear doesn't make things easy, though, and the change in my generosity would inevitably mean my friend would quickly be back out on the street. Jack was not there when I stopped, but he called me quickly afterward, having received notice from the landlord he was to get his stuff out. He and I had talked the night before, and I had given him reason to think I would help with the rent in the morning. So when he learned I had decided against it, he was not happy with me, telling me, in a slew of words generally considered profane, exactly how he felt. I had turned my back on this friendship, and he would never forgive me. The whole incident left me unsettled, discouraged, down. I had left home with confidence in God's work in the world and hope in his redemption, but I was quickly confronted with the messiness of life. Jack is an alcoholic and a drug addict and has no one to blame for himself but his situation. Something I told him that morning without using a slew of profane words, although I wanted to. And I wish more than anything he could see it. Addiction is tough. It blinds you to the truth, makes you nearly incapable of acknowledging you're wrong, and has such a firm grip on my friend that I don't know if he'll ever be free. There's part of me that's angry, part of me that wants to give him a good swift kick, metaphorically and literally. Part of me that wishes I wasn't his friend. Part of me that wants to scream back at him, beep-a-da-beep, you too. Why did I put myself in the position to be the one he calls when he's in a bind? Why did I ever let myself be vulnerable? It's my own fault for allowing him into my life, thinking perhaps I could help him to change. The truth is, he may never change, and part of me doesn't care. Part of me, though, wants what's best for him. Part of me genuinely desires good for him, even though I know what I would consider good in his life may never happen. Part of me grieves for him, knowing his behavior is the combination of so much. Bad choices, bad upbringing, terrible father, wrong crowd, unstable mental illness. The list goes on. Yes, Jack is responsible for his own mistakes. Yes, he shouldn't blame anyone but himself. But there is so much more involved than mere personal responsibility. A few months ago, in a gut-wrenching moment of pain and honesty, Jack wondered in conversation with my dad and me why he couldn't have had a father like I did. It's a great question. My dad is loving, patient, and kind. His dad is not. His dad had something to do with Jack taking his first drink at age 6, and then, when Jack was 10, he and his sister were there to witness their dad kill Jack's favorite uncle and subsequently go to prison for life. At 16, Jack got in with the wrong crowd and things moved quickly towards drugs, violence, prison. That was 30 years ago, and in the 4 or 5 years I've known him, the best I've seen him do is 60 some odd days sober. A bright 2 months that again gave way to a pattern of life that one day will surely kill him. It's painful. Life is hard. Things are not equal. Why couldn't Jack have had a father like I did? Why didn't I have a father like his? And where would I be if I had? Maybe right where he is today, in a near state of inability to turn himself around. So what now? I can hear a stereotypical Christian response echoing in my head. Turn to Jesus. Your friend can't turn himself around. That's why God sent Jesus. Jesus has done it for him. Your friend just needs to turn to Jesus. The thing is, it's just not that easy. Turn to Jesus as a catchphrase doesn't always work. And for the purpose of this discussion, it is really not my greatest concern. That my friend would somehow, some way, by somebody's work, escape the slavery of sin and addiction is not, it seems to me, the most important thing. History has taught us some people will escape such slavery in this life and others will not. Some will arrive at recovery, others will go round and round in a cycle of sin that ultimately will lead to their untimely death. The most important question is, where is God in all of this? And what does it have to do with eternity? Jack's story is not unique, nor near as horrible as other stories both you and I have heard. Pain, misery, and suffering are a part of life, part of the world in which we live. We will try our best. We ought to try our best. But we will never eliminate pain completely. People will continue to suffer, and we tolerate the agony only because we believe in eternal life. Agony, I think, I can tolerate only by believing in eternal life for everyone. I don't know what will happen with Jack. Whether he will ever come to the point of real change in this life is uncertain at best. It's not hard to imagine his life continuing as it has gone for the past 30 years until his death, untimely or otherwise. I hope I have within me enough compassion to give him another chance, and I pray God will bring others to show him the way, to push him in the right direction, to give him another opportunity to change. I pray at some point Jack will take responsibility for his life. Maybe someday when he runs out of excuses and places to hide. I'm not optimistic I'll be there if it happens, but I pray it happens soon. What I can't believe, what I refuse to believe, is that God gives up on him. If Jack never comes around, I can't believe, at the moment of his death, God throws up his hands, chalks him up as another casualty of free will gone bad, and assigns him to hell for all eternity. I refuse to believe God ignores the circumstances of Jack's life and, with a shrug of his shoulders, nonchalantly says, Jack chose to reject me. I even refuse to believe God, while perhaps pained and distressed at the circumstances of Jack's life, throws up his hands and says, there's nothing more I can do. I want to believe, I have to believe, that God continues to pursue. God continues to draw Jack in the hope that eventually, ultimately, Jack will respond in faith to what Jesus has done for him. That eventually Jack will be reconciled to God. That ultimately Jack will know and accept the love of God for him. In Jesus, God has made reconciliation possible. For you, for me, for Jack, for all of us. Even for Jack's dad. And that's the end. As I reflect on it, as I think about Jack's story, and as it relates to the church, I just think maybe the church, we've just spent too much time trying to get people to believe the right thing, or trying to get people to do what God requires. And certainly we want people to do the right thing. I mean, we want Jack, I want Jack to make some choices that will move his life in a better direction. I want him to be able to turn around and to live a life that's positive and free from addiction and aware of God's love for him and more positive in his relationships. But I think what Jack needs first, I think what all of us need first, is people who will come around us. People who will walk with us on our journey. People who will support us. We all need community. And then I think what Jack needs, what we all need, is hope. For Jack, in the face of his circumstances, for all of us in the face of our circumstances, and in the face of the suffering in the world, in the face of circumstances like Jack's, what we need is hope. So I feel like I've been fond of saying recently that the church is here primarily, first of all, to be a community for people to belong to. And second of all, to give people hope. And I find hope in the person and story of Jesus. In what the person and story of Jesus represents. The unconditional love of God for all of us. But I don't think anybody needs to believe it or get it right or understand it exactly. That it would be a source of hope for people. That's all we want it to be. Because I think people who have other people around them to support them, and people that they can support, and people that have hope, I think they'll find themselves going in the right direction in life. And although it doesn't happen, it certainly doesn't happen for everybody. What the church represents is not hope in ourselves, in how well we can do, in what we believe, or in how we behave. Our hope is in that which is greater than ourselves. Our hope is in God. So, I guess that's it. That is episode 13. As always, I'd love to hear what you think. Don't hesitate to shoot me a note. I hope you have a great beginning to the fall this September, and I look forward to seeing you in October. Thanks so much for joining us.